I'm going to go ahead and get started. First off by saying this is recorded. If anybody needs to jump out, no worries. We'll send the recording out to everybody who's registered. This is intended to be a conversation, you guys. It's super informal. I just want to share the good work that the Rooks guys are doing with all of you. And so if you have questions, please ping us. I'll be monitoring. Dalil will be monitoring. And we'll open it up at the end when he wraps if anybody has any additional questions. But that being said, for anybody I've not met, my name is Kate Guillen. I'm the founder of Simplicity Ops, and I'm delighted to have Dalil here with us today to talk about the good work that he and the Rooks guys are doing for our industry. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to you, my friend.
Awesome. I will share my screen. I have some slides prepared. As Kate mentioned, we can make this as conversational as possible. So I just have the slides as talking points. I'll kind of go through them. Might get a little passionate, so feel free to stop me along the way. If you have any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat. I'll have the chat open, or come off of mute so we can make this as conversational as possible. But really excited to be here. So exciting topic. So how do you grow your RIA firm with Microsoft solutions and automating a lot of the processes on the back end? I'll kind of jump into high level why Microsoft, and then from there I'll actually share some real world case studies for some of the solutions that we've built for our clients that help them be more efficient at the end of the day. A little bit background about myself. So I'm Dalil Allison, CEO, co-founder of RooksDM. My experience has been in the technology space for over a decade. I've worked for a bunch of different firms, from Fortune 500 all the way down to mom and pop shops, if you will, all around helping them be able to leverage technology to run their business, solve business problems, and ultimately just be as efficient as possible. Some hobbies that I enjoy. I love traveling. So if you have any good spots or travel destinations, let me know. I'm also a huge fan of coffee shops, specifically local ones. So I just recently moved to Charlottesville, so I've hit all of them here. But as I travel, I always like to go to different coffee shops along the way. So for today's presentation, I'll be tactical, I'll be strategic and tactical, both at both levels. So like I said, let me know any questions along the way. Just to open it up, and maybe you can drop some of your pain points and challenges into the comments as well too. But from our experience and working with advisory firms specifically, this is a light list, if you will, but these are the most common challenges that we see as it relates to operating their firm. So very heavy relying on email for communication, and then also playing the game of, hey, let me use my email inbox as a document repository. We see that a lot of times. A lot of copy and pasting of data in between multiple systems is another big pain point, specifically in this industry, because there's so many different third-party systems that you leverage that don't talk to each other. So there's always this constant moving data from one place to another. Manually organizing documents. So obviously, as an advisory firm, you're collecting a lot of data and documents from your clients specifically. And that might be during the intake process, onboarding process, or even as you're working with them to do the financial planning on a quarterly basis, twice a year basis as well too. That takes up a lot of the advisor's time, or the office's time, if you will. The other one that we see a lot of as well too is like individual follow-up. So if you think about scheduling your quarterly meetings with your clients, that requires someone to do that, which requires a lot of effort, but it's an important step to be able to service your client. So a lot of the individual follow-ups that are repetitive tasks that have to happen, but don't necessarily have to happen manually, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then I'll kind of go to the bottom of the list, but just utilizing their technology tools that they have available to them. So this presentation is primarily focused on the Microsoft stack. So I'll unpack a little bit more about the power of the Microsoft ecosystem and being able to leverage those tools that you already have a subscription for, but using them a little bit further. And then rounding it out is just, we see like not having the right technology ecosystem. So it's the whole measure twice, cut once, or the strategic exercise that I always talk about of taking inventory, looking at all of the technologies that you're paying for, that you have, whether it's free or paid for, creating a list of that, and then asking the question, hey, is this redundant? Do I actually need this? What's the purpose of it? And should I keep it, kill it, or replace it, is usually what we say at the end of the day. So any challenges that I didn't cover here, or that you're facing specifically that are not on this list or maybe on this list, feel free to drop them in the chat as well too. But I like to frame it like that, because that kind of lets you know things that we help solve for, and kind of the items that I'll talk about along the way throughout this presentation too. And so like I said, I'm real passionate about, our team's very passionate about it. It's all around how do you maximize the technology tools that you have available throughout your organization, specifically around the integration, automations, and AI. So I talked about integrations being a big one. That's key for being able to reduce the amount of time that you're copy and pasting data from one location to another. Automations, once again, are very keen to the repetitive tasks, scheduling the quarterly meetings, sending out a new client inquiry form, things of that nature that you're doing over and over again. There's so much value to be able to leverage automation to do that and still use automation to make it feel personalized. That's the big thing there. When you think of automation, or some clients are a little bit hesitant when they hear automation because they say, hey, I want to have my finger on it. I want it to be very personalized. And with these automation solutions that we develop, you certainly have the ability to do that. It's just framing it in a way that makes the most sense and aligns with your process throughout the firm. Here's an interesting statistic. So is a survey from Kitsis, and he talks about in this specific survey, 34% of a financial advisor's time is spent on back office activities. So almost a third, a little bit over a third, if you will. And then less than 20% is spent meeting with clients. And the reason that I included this specific statistic is because talks about how important it is to have your back office tasks be as efficient as possible, which directly align to the technologies that you have set up and the workflow automations that you have set up. So definitely high ROI, if you will, in terms of investments that you'll get back from having the right technologies in place, utilizing them, and having them be able to automate your back office activities that you have.
I hear this so often when I meet with advisors, like, the highest and best use of my time is in that client facing role. How do I get out of the admin weeds? And I'm so grateful to have your insights in this conversation, because we have our methodology in terms of like the CRM, but this is next level stuff. Most of all the advisors that we work with work on the Microsoft suite, and this I think is really powerful information for people to know that is available to help them get out of those administrative weeds. This is great.
Yeah. And I'll talk about like where to get started a little bit later, but kind of, and we've talked about this as well, Kate, too, of like how we view the world. We're very process first, technology second driven philosophy. And so like the technology is there to enable your business to be efficient, and unless you're running a technology company, it's not your core business. And so that's why it's important to kind of to certainly like map out your processes and then ask the question of, hey, is this a process related issue or is it a technology related issue? And if it is technology related issue, where does the technology fit into the process? So that's a very good point there. And so when I talk about why the Microsoft ecosystem, so here's another statistic as well too. So over 60% of Fortune 500 firms have a Microsoft 365 license. We work with firms that are using the Microsoft stack, hence this presentation. But the main reason I include this specific statistic is because these large corporations are using it. So what does that mean for us? I'm a small business owner as well too. It means we have this technology at our disposal that has all these bells and whistles for a fraction of the cost if it were us having to build it from the ground up or even having to manage it and things of that nature. So the features and functionalities that are baked into the 365 platform are drastic, and it covers a lot of ground too, and there's so many different applications that are out there. But this was eye-opening when I looked at it, because it kind of reiterates the fact of, hey, Microsoft is a great tool to have. Large firms are using it, so certainly the small, medium-sized businesses will benefit from it, and our organization does specifically for that reason as well too. And then this is kind of an adoption thing. We've been on Microsoft pre-COVID, so it's been really interesting to see. A lot of people still to this day think of Microsoft Teams as just a virtual meeting platform. We call it the future because Microsoft Teams does much more than just virtual meeting conferences. It allows you to have chat communication. It allows you to store documents. It allows you to automate things into the Teams location. So then that way you can have your communication centralized, which I can talk a little bit about later. But the big thing with this one is the adoption that has happened since pre-COVID and post-COVID and everyone being virtual, and now the hybrid teams that are out there to stay, right? This shows adoption for Microsoft Teams has drastically increased. And once again, I kind of tie this back of all the features that are getting released on Microsoft Teams has been phenomenal. And even since we started using it way back in, I believe it was 2018, 2019 timeframe, there's so much that has been added and so much robustness that you can leverage Teams for specifically. And you can just see the numbers don't lie. So in 2019, only 20 million Teams users, and in 2023, it's over 300 million Teams users. And another thing for this statistic that I've noticed as well too, just working with clients directly, is our clients are much more comfortable with using Teams. I would still say Zoom is probably a little bit more comfortable, if you will, for people because they're using it a little bit more, and it was the big thing in COVID. But we've seen the adoption as it relates to Microsoft Teams and the friction of getting into a Teams meeting not be as much as an issue as it was, say, 2019 or 2020. So that's good, because if you do have 365, it comes with Microsoft Teams. You can leverage it for internal and external communication across the board.
We got a question on Teams there. I don't know if you can see it.
Is Teams RA secure approved easily? So we work with advisory firms directly. I know our delivery team knows all the bells and whistles in terms of what features and functionalities to turn on and off. I know there's obviously compliance and regulation restrictions. So with that, what our delivery team does is kind of bake in that process of, hey, here's how you use Teams. Sometimes I know they have turned off the chat feature and functionality to limit the risk of things going into that mechanism. But on the flip side, Teams for a document repository, you could use it as that as well too, and have a central location to be able to access your documents. So yes, certainly we do have advisory RA specifically using Teams for communication and collaboration. So, and once again, it ties back to processes as well too. If people should know or be trained to, hey, if we are using the chat, then we're using it for this reason and this reason only. No client information or whatever it may be will not be exposed in there.
Yeah, I would say like 90% of our clients use Teams exactly the way that you're saying. Like they use the chat for like internal dialogue, but we would never store, client requests or account numbers or heaven forbid socials or anything like that.
Exactly. Teams also has the voice over IP. So there is like phone call and text messaging capabilities within it as well too. But that's an add-on, which I'll talk about. There's Teams Premium. There's a case study I'll have a little bit later that talks about AI meeting notes and recaps that Teams Premium offers, which has been working out really great. Is the document storage considered compliant? So as I mentioned, yes, we have RAs that are using Microsoft to store documents, so certainly in compliance with with the necessary items that are there. I don't know if that answers your question. I think it's more of a yes/no question, but let me know if there was something specific you were looking for on that end, Curtis. So I can't see everyone's hands, but if I could say, would you love to have a mansion? I'm sure the answer would be yes. I know Kate is raising her hand there. I would certainly raise my hand. And so what I always say is you already have a mansion with Microsoft. And so the way that I always use, or the analogy I always use, is Microsoft is a huge mansion. And in any great mansion, you have multiple rooms, and the multiple rooms have different functions. And so you can see here is how I have it outlined as well too. So the Microsoft ecosystem, huge ginormous mansion, and then there's all these different applications that live in it. And so that's the way I view it, as like the different rooms that are in there. So obviously Outlook for email and calendar, you have Teams for collaboration and communication, you have SharePoint for file storage, and also intranet, and you can use it for communication as well too. So they have all these different applications within the Microsoft ecosystem, and that's pretty powerful, because even with 365 out of the box, the horsepower that you get with it is quite a bit. But then there's additional applications, and I have like Power BI and Power Automate. While these require other licenses, they still live in the same ecosystem. So it makes it much easier to move data between the same house. Or if you think about people traveling within the same house, you can go from one room to another very easily versus having to leave the house, go into another house, open the room. So that's why we believe in the Microsoft ecosystem. It also just makes it easier from a scalability standpoint. So if you're thinking about adding new team members to the team, or you have team members leave the firm, it makes it a flip of a switch, right? You remove their Microsoft license, and majority of the things that they have access to, or the big things that they have access to, would be removed. And then you just have a set list of the other third-party systems that are out there. So it makes it easier as well to add and remove users across the board. And then here's some other key points. So obviously I mentioned how easy it is. It's definitely affordable, which I'll talk about in the next slide. And then the big thing is, even if you're just getting started or you're a solo practitioner, you're looking to build up, Microsoft is great for that 365 because it's meant to be integrated. So you can start small and have the foundation to begin with. And then from there, you can start adding things to it. So it might be, hey, you're just now using Teams for collaboration communication. And then later down the road, you might say, hey, I want to use Teams files to store all of my documents, and I want documents to automatically go there. So then you couple it with Microsoft Power Automate that will do the routing automation to get the documents into the appropriate client folder. So it makes it much easier to be able to do those things. And then also it's meant to be integrated. So if you think about integrating Calendly to Wealthbox or Calendly to Redtail, we could bridge that gap by using a Microsoft specific application, which I'll talk about a little bit later, to say, hey, anytime a new prospect books a time on my calendar using Calendly, then add them into Redtail automatically as a new lead in there. And so we can bridge that gap using these Microsoft solutions as well too. This is the 365 license. I'm sure if you are using 365, you're on one of these. The most popular one that we see is the business standard. So you get what business standard is $12.50 per month per user if you're paying on a yearly basis. So much features and functionality. Obviously, you get the basic productivity apps, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams. You also get OneDrive, you get SharePoint, you get Exchange. There's some that are not even included here. Planner comes with it as well too. So if you want like a task management system, you can bake that in to your Microsoft Teams channels, if you will, and leverage that application that is there. But you can see here for such a low price per month per user, there's so much robustness and different applications that are provided to you as the end consumer to leverage. And as I was mentioning earlier, so many different ones. So this is like a screenshot that I took of like the apps that are on my 365. It doesn't even include all of them, but it just goes to show you if there's a technology that you're looking for, Microsoft likely could have it. The question becomes of, hey, is it the right technology for you? And does it fit into your process at the end of the day? So that's the big one there, but you can see here, we always ask the question when we come in and we're working with clients is, hey, how are you using Microsoft today? Are you using it for file storage, for collaboration? One big one that we see a lot of times is a document repository. So the firms that we work with they'll be on Microsoft and then they'll have like ShareFile or Dropbox, or they'll have another third-party document repository. And Microsoft comes with SharePoint. You get a lot of storage horsepower around it. So the question becomes, hey, is there a specific reason that you're not using SharePoint for your document repository? And kind of answering that question, there may be a reason for it, but as you think through the question to ask is like, hey, is that the right answer or not? And then I kind of alluded to this as well too. So the redundant tools. So here's a screenshot, certainly of Microsoft Teams. So if you're using Zoom, we work with some clients and they may still keep one Zoom license that's firm wide, and then they might go down to just Microsoft Teams for the virtual meeting, depending on their audience. And if it works for them, sometimes they'll do a trial run as well too, to say, hey, I'm a little bit concerned about the adoption process. So let me do a trial run. I'll do it with a subset of clients. And then from there, if everything looks good, then I'll dwindle down. Another one, if you're not using, I think everyone to this day is using a calendar scheduling tool, but Microsoft Bookings, like I mentioned earlier, comes out of the box with your Microsoft 365 license. So if you don't have like a Calendly, Acuity, Jira Reminders, you can certainly use Microsoft Bookings that's included out of the box with your 365 license to automate the scheduling process. So once again, is there an opportunity for you to think about, hey, are there redundant tools that I could eliminate that Microsoft will help me solve? And if the answer is yes, not only are you saving on the pure costs associated with the software license for the other software that you're paying for, but also, as I mentioned, like the clicking in and out between multiple systems, and then from the centralized kind of document repository, if you will, within the Microsoft ecosystem.
When you work with clients, do you do like an audit of their technology to figure out if there's any redundancies to help them eliminate them?
Yes. Yeah. So our services span the gamut. So that would fall under advisory services. We do have assessments that we provide for advisory firms specifically. And that's where we work around, okay, what's current state? Give us the list of all of your different technologies. And we want everything. Like if
Yeah.
you're using Adobe Reader, if you're using DocuSign, like we want to be able to see all of the items. And then based off of that, we can spot some low hanging I call it low hanging fruit, right? Of like quick wins that you may be able to implement that will help you save cost, money, and make you more efficient. And usually, like I said, document repository might be one. Forms could be another one as well too. So like there might be a few different applications that they're using that they're only using it for the forms but not the other functionality or vice versa. So we'll be able to analyze that once we get their entire tech stack. And then the big thing is tying it back to what's the future state going to look like. So even in our assessments, we provide a roadmap as well too to say, okay, we know where you're at today, we know where the challenges are, but where do you want to end up? So it might be the three major reasons we see firms looking to get more efficient is they're a solo practitioner and they just want to free up their time. So it might not be, hey, I'm looking to grow this massive business, is I just want to be able to get more time back in my day. So I'm willing to invest in these efficiencies and I want to be more efficient. It could be, hey, I'm looking to grow, so I want to add more clients to my roster, and I need to be able to have the capacity to do that. And automation and these technologies could actually help me. And then the third one is, hey, I want to service my current client base, but provide additional service offerings. So it might be the tax prep, or it might be some other financial planning offerings that a firm has that they want to extend into their current base. And so that's where these tools and automations really kick in for them. Perfect. And then, so this one is the one that I talk about the most. So Microsoft Power Platform is a very, very powerful suite of applications that Microsoft has. This is one of our bread and butter. So 365 is a big one for us. We also do a ton of work with advisory firms on the Power Platform. They have 5 different applications within Power Platform. Not to get too technical, I'll start with the one on the bottom left. So Power Automate. So when I was talking about, hey, anytime someone books a meeting in Calendly, I want to automatically create a record in my CRM system. That's where we can use Microsoft Power Automate as the intermediary between those two different applications that may not have an integration with each other. So getting that set up using Power Automate is how we would do that. We could also do things which I'll talk a little bit later about in our case studies of like routing documents into the client folder systematically, or if you receive an email, then knowing, hey, that email came in a certain format, so we can automatically add a new record in the CRM. So there's a lot that we can do with routing data and documents to a location using Microsoft Power Automate. Some other firms that we talk to, we don't do a ton of work on, we don't do work on Zapier. So a lot of people know Zapier or Zapier. Power Automate is a comparable solution to that, but we say it's a little bit more robust because there's a lot that we can do with it. So that's a big one there. The other one is Power Pit. So I'll go to the top. So Power Apps gives us the ability to build custom apps at a fraction of the cost if you would be building something from the ground up. It's a low code, no code business platform solution. And the big thing with that is it's more of an internal application that you want to build because it has a front end user interface. So if your team needs to interact with the data and make updates and changes along the way, we can build a custom Power Apps that would be able to handle that, and all the data would be centralized in that specific app. And then we could couple it with the automation. So let's say, hey, anytime a specific date updates, then do these series of events on the back end. We could use the workflow automation to do that. And then the other ones I'll kind of fly through, but Power BI, that gives us the ability to generate reports. So if you think about aggregating data from multiple different locations and you want to create some sort of visual dashboard, so this might be for a larger firm that might have several different advisors, and they maybe want to like generate a report to say, hey, which advisors are at capacity, or who has more availability, or where's most of my revenue coming from. We can aggregate data from multiple different systems such as CRM. We can aggregate it from accounting and bring that to one location and create these visualizations with filters on them. So you can filter it by year, you can do it in multiple years, you can do it by type, person, things of that nature. And then Power Pages, relatively net new application within the Microsoft Power Platform, but some ways that we're seeing it is to be able to expose data that you might have on your internal systems to your client. So a good example is a client might say, hey, where's my file in the process? We could leverage Power Pages to expose, hey, we've done these steps for your specific plan. We're at this point right now, and then we have these steps remaining. So Power Pages gives us that ability to report the status out and also require the user to authenticate through it as well. And then the last one is Power Virtual Agent. So if you think about the chat bots that live on websites, that's one way. But from an operational standpoint, what we could do is leverage Microsoft Power Virtual Agents to have all your SOPs live there. So if a new team member is coming on board and they're getting ramped up and they're looking for the SOP that's associated with a new client being onboarded into the practice, they can type into the chat, hey, please provide me the onboarding documentation for a new client coming into the firm. Then there would be a custom repository of data that's been tagged based off your specific firm. It would then generate the appropriate SOPs associated with it. Awesome. So that's the Power Platform. Once again, not included in 365. These are additional licenses. And depending on how it's set up, it could require one license, could require multiple licenses. And depending on who needs access as well, too, are some factors to consider there. But once again, for the price associated with the license, it's very nominal in terms of what you're getting with the features that Microsoft Power Platform has to offer. Perfect. And I apologize, Sarah. I will try to talk slower. And I know, Kate, you do some automation work as well, too. So I don't know how Power Platform ties into some of your stuff today. I know you're more within the CRM standpoint, right?
Yeah, for sure. But it's really interesting that even once we get the CRM totally dialed and people start using it, we still find some like areas of friction that could be solved with things like this. I'm taking notes because there's a lot of opportunity here. I mean, just in my own business to leverage some of these tools to help with some of the manual work that we're doing. I'm not a huge fan of Zapier either. So this is very intriguing.
Yeah. And that's why we love the work that you do as well, too, because the CRM, I always say the CRM is probably the most important system because that's typically the point of origination for the data. So if I'm a new client and I'm reaching out, that's the intake process or new prospect process, and that's usually captured in the CRM. So having all that information from the origination point forward is important.
Well, but the problem is getting the data in there consistently, getting everybody, it just, once we get people to capture the data, making sure that it's, well maintained. I feel like there's a huge opportunity here to leverage some of these tools to make it easier on the administrative team that's having to manage the CRM.
Yeah, for sure. And we can do some automations. We can also getting it in there would be one thing, but that's definitely true. Awesome. So I will jump into anyone have any questions, feel free to drop them in. Related to 365 or Power Platform, more than happy to answer them. If not, I will jump into some real world examples. I think we're doing okay on time. So I'll start with some real world examples. These are actual case studies from clients that we've worked with to help develop solutions around. So you can see here, so in this specific use case or the client that we worked with, we were looking to streamline the way that data was being collected. So there was a lot of different information that was coming from the clients, and it was very time consuming, right? Of like, hey, now I'm looking to capture all of the new client information. I need to request it, I need to capture it, and then I need to file it. So a lot of different steps in the process. What we were able to do is kind of restructure the way that the data was originally collected. So we created some custom forms up front to say, hey, for the onboarding process, then here's a form that you would leverage and send it out to the client. They would then have the appropriate information they need to provide, versus if it's a net current client, then it would be a different form with certain fields because you would have already some of the information required to get captured. Then from there, we obviously set up validation. So that's why we love online forms. I talk about online forms a lot. The ability to leverage them are very key. So not only do you collect basic information, it allows you the ability to collect attachments and documents. And because you're collecting it through the online form, we can couple it with workflow automation. So in this case, when the user fills out the form, they might have attachments associated with it. And then once they hit submit, what we can do is then say, okay, couple that with a workflow automation using Power Automate to then figure out, hey, who's this information from? It's from Delu Allison because we have first name, last name. We have an email address associated with it. And then any attachments. So let's say it's a tax, the last 2 years of their tax returns, we could know that, hey, that attachment is the last 2 years of their tax return. So then take those attachments and rename it to say Allison, DeLille -tax returns, right? So we can use the workflow automation to rename the documents. And then we could also use the workflow automation once they hit submit to store them in the appropriate client folder, because we know who submitted that form, we know who it's for, and then we know the data that's associated with it. So it automates not only, it doesn't only make it easier for the client to know, hey, this is the information I need to provide. It also ensures that hopefully they provide all of the information, because we can use the validation as well too. And then the last part of it is once they hit submit, we do workflow automation that would process that information into the appropriate location. And so the screenshots kind of show that it's going into a specific Teams channel in this instance. So it saves a tremendous amount of time is what ends up happening there.
That's incredible. Two quick questions. Back a slide when you were talking about the Power Platform. Eric wants to know if you know the pricing on that off the top of your head.
I do not, honestly. It is per user, and it varies depending on which application that you're using. So Automate's a different price than Apps is a different price than BI, and it depends on who needs to access the information as well too. Typically, Apps is only for internal users because you need a Microsoft Power Apps license. So that's why we say those apps that we develop are for internal usage. And same thing with Automate, it's usually behind the scenes. But I think it ranges, I want to say it's somewhere in the ballpark of like 12, similar to 365 per user per license.
And then Jessica has a question. She says, does the customer need to have a Microsoft login to upload documents using custom forms?
So depending what application they're using. So we do a lot of work in a few different online forms. So like JotForm is a big one for us. We've done some stuff as well with Precise FP. I know they've done some stuff with Typeform. So usually to fill out the online form, you don't need to log into Microsoft. It's usually just a front-facing, almost like a website, right, where you go in and fill out the inquiry. Awesome. So this one, obviously, lots of meetings that we take throughout the day, especially being an advisor, being able to capture meeting notes. Teams Premium. So this is an add-on solution with Teams, but once again, it's out of the box and it's baked into Microsoft. So everything is centralized to one location. I love Microsoft Teams for that reason, and I love to use it for meetings specifically because of the central location of I can go back and reference the note, like any links or any items that were posted in that meeting. I can go back and easily reference it, and if I can't remember what day it was, I can just check my calendar, and then my calendar is linked to that specific chat within the day that it happened. So it makes it easier for that. But this specific one is Microsoft Teams Premium. I do know the price on this. It's $7. Yeah, $7 per user per month. It's an add-on in addition to 365. So if you have Business Basic, $12.50 plus another $7 per user per month, it gets you the AI meeting notes. It's amazing. I use it all the time. I use it for client meetings. I use it for internal meetings. It does a really good job of capturing. Here's a few screenshots. So this is just from a demo environment. You could see here, once again, centralizing everything to that meeting to one location. So you could see where it says product roadmap, that's the meeting recording. So I know, hey, for this discussion, the meeting recording is there. On the right-hand side, you can see the AI meeting notes that have been generated. It also puts it into sections. So you can see the little carrot to the left of Serena, to the left of Danielle. If you were to click that, it would have an expansion of, hey, here's the major points from this conversation, and then here's the sub points associated with it. So it does a good job of grouping things. And then also towards the bottom, what it does is suggested tasks. So one of the tricks I always recommend whenever using AI is kind of navigate the AI to where you want it to go. So when I'm wrapping up a meeting, I would say, hey, Kate, thanks so much for your time today. So the next steps are the action items that we're taking away from this meeting are, and that way it kind of triggers the AI solution to know, capture these items, and Dalil is saying them. So then that way the suggested tasks that are there will usually be pretty spot on because I do the recap towards the end to make sure I'm capturing everything. And that makes it easier because then you don't have to really be on a call taking notes and then also trying to ask questions. I find that to be pretty challenging, and multitasking is obviously a challenge. So this makes it much easier to be able to do that.
I love that. The whole AI note taker has completely changed my life. When I started this business, I would take scratch notes, and it was so hard to be present when you're
Yep.
trying to like listen and take scratch notes. And then as we started to grow, I had a team member in on every call with me, helping me capture, the essence, the notes, action items, whatever. And now these bots, like, they make life so much easier, and they're very trustworthy.
Yeah. And it's really nice too. Like there's I don't know if, yeah, you could see it. I don't know if my mouse moves, but where it says AI powered notes and tasks created for you, if you click on copy all, it literally just copies all of the text. So you can copy and paste that into a document and then send it to the client, or send it to, you could do whatever you
Wonderful.
want with it, which is really nice. I think there might be a question.
Yeah, they're asking about AI note takers, Jump or FinMate. FinMate is the AI note taker that we recommend most often. They do a really great job. I actually don't have any firsthand experience using Jump, so I can't really speak to Jump, but I love FinMate. We use it often, as do a lot
Yeah,
of our clients.
I haven't used either. The other one that I've used is Fireflies in the
Yeah.
past, but now I've just specifically just been using this Microsoft one, and it's worked really great for me.
And the only reason I like, FinMate and Jump is they integrate directly with the CRM, so it makes it really easy to copy those notes, push them directly to the CRM, which is where we have to maintain, client communication for compliance reasons.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I've heard good things about Jump. I just don't have any firsthand experience using it. So
Makes sense.
I don't know if you see that other question there from Michelle.
What do you usually recommend for data housing on Microsoft Azure, Dataverse, Fabric? It varies. That might be more of a question for our delivery team. I know, so we do Azure. So Dataverse is anytime we're using Power Apps, Dataverse is the database there. I do know the delivery team uses Azure as well too. So it just depends on what solution's being built and what data we're housing and for what reason we're housing it. So a lot of unknowns, but yeah, we work across the micro. Our delivery team is familiar across the Microsoft stack with Azure and Dataverse as well too. Awesome. I will try to be brief on the next ones. So we talked about the meeting notes. This one I was kind of alluding to earlier, the ability to automate the new client inquiries that are coming in. So in this specific use case, if you think about listing sites, so a lot of times you have these listing sites like NAPFA or XY or whatever it may be, and someone can submit an inquiry, and then you usually receive that inquiry via an email. It's usually standardized. So that email comes in to say, hey, you received the new inquiry. And with that, what usually happens is that could either one person is the bottleneck for that specific email. So they receive the inquiry response from the form that's getting filled out. They may be super slammed, so they don't have the appropriate time to follow up right away. And so like the big things with leads is timing. So you want to follow up as quickly as possible. Or they just might overlook it. They might miss it from their inbox because their inbox is so flooded with all different emails. So they might overlook it. And so with this specific automation, it's actually pretty simple, but it's pretty powerful because it ensures things don't fall through the cracks. So this advisor, they had a few different listing sites that they were leveraging. They were getting inquiries through it. And so what we were able to do is leverage workflow automation to say, hey, first and foremost, any of those inquiry responses, let's use what's known as a shared mailbox. So instead of it going to Kate at simplicityapps.com or Dalil at RooksDM.com, let's use a general inbox. So it could be like info, it could be sales, it could be ABC, whatever you want to name it. Anytime that inquiry form gets submitted, the email goes to the central location where it's a shared mailbox, and multiple people can access that shared mailbox. And then what we were able to do is leverage it once again with workflow automation. So we know, hey, when an email is received in this shared inbox, if it's from this specific source, then do these things. And these things would be, hey, take the data out of the email, be able to create a new lead in the CRM system, and then also in tandem automatically do an autoresponder. So if the inquiry form didn't have an autoresponder, you could say, hey, thank you for filling out the form. A member of our team will be with you momentarily. Or, hey, thank you for filling out the form. Here's a link to our calendar to book a time. So depending on what you want to do, we could customize all of that messaging as well too. But the big thing there was automatically responding to the inquiry that came in a timely fashion. It also was ensuring that the lead didn't get overlooked in the email inbox because there was a new lead generated in the CRM. And then from there, what we did in this specific one, they were using Teams. So anytime a new lead inquiry came in via this source, then we just post it in their sales channel. Hey, new inquiry came in that specific Teams channel. So then everyone on that team would be notified to know, hey, we just got a new inquiry that came in as well too. And you can see here, here's a screenshot of Microsoft Power Automate behind the scenes, just for this demo. But a lot of the customization that could happen as well too. So specifically to that person is where the email is going to. We can update the language as we best see fit. So there's dynamic variables, we call them, that we could leverage. So hi, Dalil, thank you for filling out the form. Please go do A, B, and C. The other nice thing too, if we want it to do, is depending on where the lead source was coming from, we can customize the messaging. So we might know, hey, this one came from XY, this one came from NAPFA, this one came from listing ABC. Then we could have different responses based off of the lead source. That's dynamic, if you will. So very, very valuable because it ensures, hey, you're capturing potential net new revenue that could be coming in. And it automates the steps, so you don't have to worry about doing the follow-ups. You could just do the action that's required to either book them a call directly or get them to the next milestone to get on a phone with the specific prospect. And then here's another one. This one's a pretty cool one because it's a two-part automation solution. We all love receiving new clients, but there's also a process of onboarding them. And so like this is the ability to automatically send out contracts to clients. So usually going back to the CRM system, a lot of the general basic information for a client would be living in the CRM system, first name, last name, email address, so on and so forth. But there might be custom data points that you want to capture either out of the CRM, so you can create custom fields within the CRM system, or in this case, what we did is leveraged an online form, and the admin was filling out the online form. I believe in this case, it was specifically around the services that they were being provided and then the amount for some of the services. And we coupled those two different data points. So data from CRM, data from the online form. And then when a client was ready to sign, we would be able to kind of click a button and automatically pre-populate the contract that needed to go out for signature. In this case, they were using DocuSign. So we had an integration with DocuSign that was kind of built there to say, okay, once the DocuSign envelope goes out, we know it's in a pending status. So Dalil hasn't signed yet, or all the parties haven't signed. We have a workflow that will then trigger once both parties sign it. And once both parties sign it, then the workflow would kick off again that says, hey, both parties have signed. Take this document, download it, rename it with the appropriate name, and then store it into that client specific folder. So then that way it lives where it needs to live at the end of the day. So it's not stuck in someone's email inbox. It's not stuck in like a DocuSign where you have to log into and go find it. We know, hey, for Dalil's file, if I want to find the contract that he signed for the services and the associated information for it, I just go into this folder and it's located there. So that's where the two-part automation kicks in on the front end of pre-populating the contract, and then on the back end, once it's signed, being able to process it automatically. And then this just kind of shows how we reoriented the process. So in the old process, you could see a lot of steps required the staff member to do internally. They also started it off with an email that was getting sent to another staff member. In the future state, we ended up using the online form. And then from there, the staff items got fully automated. So you can see here's after automation. So now they fill out the form, boom, a series of workflows kick off. It creates a task in CRM. It sends the welcome email, downloads the internal document. In this one, we actually added the latest version of the ADV for this advisory firm to the contract. They wanted it to be like that. So we went to the public website, downloaded it, and then appended it or added it to the contract and then sent it for signature is what we did in this one. So a lot that we can do. but obviously less time spent generating the contracts, less error for mistyping information. So it decreases the amount of human errors there. And then the turnaround time is much faster. Awesome. And then the last one I'll kind of go through is data extraction. So this is where AI kicks in. This is really good if you have tax prep. So if you're doing a lot of different documents, in this case, obviously, they were receiving a lot of paper documents from multiple parties, and they were having to process the data out of the document. And these were actual physical paper copies. So with the solution that we've developed using Microsoft, we're able to then have the internal team member just submit the document to our AI solution. We've trained the AI solution to be able to parse the information out. In the screenshot, you can see here it's a 1099. So we can know, hey, we want to parse these specific data points out of the 1099 and put it into a central location. So then the people internally could process the information. For the demo, I just have it going into an Excel spreadsheet, but we can push it into whatever system that an advisor would want to put that data into, and then they can do the actions that are necessary because now they have the data to be able to do that. So it eliminates the manual step of having to receive paper documents and process them, especially if there are types of documents you're receiving over and over again. And this is where it's key. If you're doing any tax prep, this is a really good solution for that specifically. So I'll kind of tie it up. So where to start? I mentioned this earlier, process first, technology second. These are the major processes that we see. I would say if you don't already have your processes outlined, even if it's in a Word document that just outlines the major buckets and the subsequent sub-steps that are associated with those different buckets, that's where I would start. And the four major ones that we flag are intake. So net new client reaches out to your advisory firm, says, hey, I'm interested in financial services, financial planning, financial investment, the services that you offer. You capture that information in the intake process. Then from there, the onboarding process is typically triggered of, hey, I'm ready to move forward. Please send me a contract. That would trigger the onboarding process. And then management would be, now that the contract's in place, you received the initial payment, you received the preliminary information you need to receive. Now it's all about maintaining the client relationship and providing the actual services that they hired you for. And then from there, one that gets overlooked is the offboarding process. And that kind of aligns with compliance as well too. So let's say there's a transition, maybe they're moving to another firm, maybe they have a major life event that happens. So making sure I call it, put the bow on the file. And so having a process for that as it relates to offboarding is important as well too. And then this is a quadrant that kind of shows it. And I can share this deck out after the fact as well too, but this kind of gives you more of a visual of how we look at it when we're coming in and working with advisory firms specifically. And awesome. That's all that I had for today. Hopefully that was valuable. But like I said, Microsoft is super powerful. It's a great solution to be able to leverage. It has so many different applications. And if you utilize it accordingly, then it can certainly help you automate and streamline a lot of your back office tasks that you have to do to service your client, but not necessarily have to do manually.
My mind is blown. I don't know about the rest of the group, but this is so valuable and has really inspired me to take a look at like our internal process for bringing on new prospects and new clients, and like how unbelievably manual that process is. I didn't know that Microsoft had the capabilities of doing this. So this is extremely valuable, and you will be hearing from us. I know we got another project going, but we got to get some of this implemented, because the amount of manual work that we're doing, like renaming files, taking things out of email, saving them in SharePoint, is very time consuming.
Yes, we can automate a lot of that. So
Crazy. I had no idea.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was yeah, I always enjoy talking about this, and that's part of the work that we do as well too. It's more just educational, because Microsoft, like what we've seen, is just, it's an underutilized platform across the board, specifically in the advisory space too. And so like 365 is the big one, but if you couple it with a lot of like Power Platform specifically, that's where you're getting a lot of horsepower. And then they mentioned Azure as well too. I didn't even cover the Azure pieces that are available. So if something doesn't align with Power Platform, if it doesn't make sense for us to use that as a technology platform, we can go the Azure route and start to think about things a little bit more custom by nature. So it gives us a lot of robustness to do things based off what the business needs is the most important thing there.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is how you take it to the next level. I'm so impressed, and I really appreciate you sharing your valuable insights with the community. I don't see any other questions. You've got a couple minutes, you guys, if anybody wants to ping us in the chat or in the Q&A. This is really awesome. And for those of you that asked, we did record it. We'll send the recording out to all the participants. Dalio will get the slide deck. And you've got his contact information there on that QR code if anybody wants to take a deep dive into this stuff. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm
And
so
Kate, I was going to ask, like, in terms of, I know we've talked about it a few different times, but in terms of, do you typically start with an audit as well too, or kind of what's the process that you go through?
Yeah, and so we partner with advisors that are looking to grow and scale their business while never like sacrificing their client service experience. And we have found that the best tool to manage that is your client relationship management software. So we start by auditing their CRM and figuring out, like, kind of like you're doing, like, how well is it utilized or underutilized? What are the features they're using? How can we do it better? How do we get adoption and consistency? Basically follow the exact same process, but we start with their CRM.
Yeah, which is great. And you
Yeah,
do
but
a
the
lot of the
CRM
workflow build outs too, right?
yeah,
Within the CRM.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And but even after you totally dial in the CRM, you'll find there's still gaps with note
Mhm.
taking, document storage. Like, the CRM can't be all the things. So for anybody that uses Microsoft, this is super helpful to bridge some of those gaps.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's fantastic.
Awesome. Well,
Well, this
and
has
I
been
also have my QR code. If anyone's interested, feel free to reach out. You could book as part of today's session. You could book a free 30-minute consultation. So I'm more than happy to chat with anyone about any specific questions that you have. And then that's my email as well too. And then the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. So if you send me a LinkedIn request, just make a comment that you saw me on this webinar, because I get so many different requests, so it's hard to filter them out, but feel free to reach out.
This is awesome. Really resonated. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights. We'll look forward to doing this again some other time. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you for having me. Have a good day. See you
You bet.
guys.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.
All
See
right.
y'all.
Bye.